In this video, we're talking about oral testosterone replacement therapy, and back with us as a guest is
Dr. Cash, some people call me.
welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, so oral testosterone, it's really one of those things that I think you have to look at the history of it as well because it's really um, it's come out basically in two different categories. So in the past, oral testosterone was rightfully so considered liver toxic, 17 alpha methylation, and that means it's going to the liver, it's getting processed through the liver, it's toxic to the liver, and for obvious reasons, it was removed from the market. So that was kind of the history of oral testosterone, and that's how some physicians, NPs, PAs, and current healthcare professionals tend to have historically have viewed oral testosterone. What has happened in previous years and more recent years rather is that oral testosterone essentially got, you could say, remade to be absorbed through the lymphatic system, specifically through the gastrointestinal lymphatic system. And that's very important because that means that now we're able to take a pill with testosterone in it that that absorbs into your bloodstream without any liver toxicity. It's kind of the bottom line of oral testosterone. And so now we basically have a new modality or new method of taking testosterone. You have your injections, your topicals. Obviously, over the years, we've had our pellets and patches and things like that. And, that's for a different video, I think. But a pill is a simple option. People take pills, various pills, whether it's their vitamin D, blood pressure medication, Tylenol, whatever it is. So for it's a new modality, safe option of testosterone delivery. So I think that's kind of the first key step. Um, then the next steps come in, and that's we get into like efficacy, you get into side effects, you get into absorption, comparison to other modalities, and so right now we have there's been generic oral testosterone undecanoate that's been on the market, and so here in Canada, um, oral testosterone was off the market for a little bit of time. The generic came back, and then we have Jatenzo and Kaisertrex. That's two brand um, uh, oral testosterone products that are on the market here, at least in North America. And so, but really, what these medications are doing is you're taking, twice daily testosterone essentially, and you're titrating the dose. You're doing lab monitoring within the same parameters as you would with roughly the same as you would with injections and topicals, and you're adjusting to symptoms essentially. So I think the a lot of the on the practitioner side, a lot of people may not have as much experience with oral testosterone, and for a good reason. I mean, to some extent, it's a little bit newer in comparison to like injections that have been around forever, for example, and topicals that have been around forever. But a lot of it is really the same. A lot of what we're doing as far as monitoring, titration, adjustments, a lot of it is the same. And so uh, generally, we'll start patients off at a pretty good dose. We'll have them do labs in about 4 or 5 weeks. The key thing with oral testosterone is they should take it with food in order to make sure there's optimal absorption and optimal bioavailability. And so that's one area where things can get a little murky if patients aren't taking with food. And so we check labs typically about 4 or 5 hours after taking a dose. So a bit of a slight contrast to injections, for example, where the hours don't really matter. It's really the days that matter. But for the most part, there's a lot of room for error though with checking because there's a there's a bigger range. So if a patient checks a little too soon, too late, the levels are relatively stable. And so we'll typically do monitoring after about 4 or 5 weeks. We'll make an adjustment. A lot of patients after the first set of labs will need an upward dose adjustment typically. We adjust to symptoms a lot, especially with given the lymphatic absorption, I find that sometimes the serum levels don't always fully reflect how the patient feels, and so the patients a lot of times they may feel great, and so that's from speaking with some other physicians that do prescribe oral testosterone, is they find that they really like to even more so focus on symptoms than anything else. So even more so than you would often do with injectables, you look and see what works for that personal patient, and you find the right dose for them. Um, there's not as much fine tuning involved. Again, as long as they're taking it with food and they're taking it, spread out throughout the day, like within a reasonable amount of time, you're spreading a dose out 10, 12 hours or so. They're pretty much okay with that. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing to take. It's just a matter of remembering to take the pill. Um, in terms of I guess the reasoning for why we need this modality of treatment. So there's going to be patients who don't want to inject, right? I think we all run into those patients. They don't want to inject for various reasons. They're not comfortable injecting. They're not able to get into a clinic or whatever reason. I mean, there could be all the way across the country. Who knows, right? They're not comfortable injecting. And there's a lot of patients who don't do as well with topicals. Some patients do great with topicals and they do amazing with it. Some patients don't. That's just how it is. And even with some of the compounded creams, some patients don't do well with it. And then with creams, obviously, transfer risk to others. That's a bit of a risk. Some people don't want to take that risk. They have a new baby, so on, for whatever reason. So having a pill option just gives another thing they can go for if they're in a situation where, like, I don't want to inject and I have a baby. I don't want a cream on me. So it gives them an option. And then for others, when we talk about what's available, like, hey, you know, you can take a pill, you can do this, you can do that. There's different options. Here's kind of the pros and cons. And they're like, I want to try a pill first. I'll try it for a couple of months, see how I like it. If I don't like it, maybe I'll switch to injections. And I think that's totally fine. And I think one good thing about the pills is it's easy to switch around too. So I got a patient, they want to go from pills to topicals. Easy to do. You can do the change or shift almost immediately. You want to switch from pills to injections, very easy to do, very easy to shift around. So I think there's a lot of flexibility with it. The main downside, I mean, the two downsides really is one, they can't really forget. They forget, they're going to get some ups and downs in their levels, which we all know is not good. And then two, like anything else, it might not work well for some people. Absorption could be variable. And I think my personal opinion is some patients who may have malabsorption issues, if they have inflammatory bowel disease, they've had gastrointestinal surgery in the past, Crohn's disease, maybe celiac disease. I mean, it depends. Like, I don't want to say any hard facts here, but I think if someone has issues absorbing for whatever medical reason through their gastrointestinal tract, like if they can't absorb vitamins well, they can't absorb fats well, they've had bariatric surgery. I mean, there's various patients like that. Then I think I probably would pause a little bit before offering that to them as like a good recommendation. I mean, they can certainly try it out for a couple months and see how they feel, but I think at the same time, I would be telling them, hey, listen, you're taking a pill. We already know that you might not absorb certain medications that well. So just FYI, just in the background, keep in mind we might have to switch to something else. And the monitoring really is the same. I mean, we'll do labs usually about 4 or 5 weeks with these patients. And we're kind of watching the same things with a lot of patients. I find we often do need to go up on their dose after the first set of labs. I don't see a whole lot of erythrocytosis. I think we all know injectables, you're going to see a little bit more on that spike of the erythrocytosis with the EPO stimulation, the bone marrow stimulation with injectables, just with that spike that happens. But likewise, I find pills are, it's not as soft, let's say, on the erythrocytosis as gels and topicals are. I should really say topicals rather than gels, but it's not as soft on that, but it's kind of a middle ground. So, and then don't really see a whole lot in terms of any immediate side effects. I don't get any gastrointestinal upset. Don't really see a whole lot of that. So I think it's an option. That's how I usually tell patients. Doesn't mean that like this is what you should take, but it's an option.
What about the cost in comparison to injections or creams?
Yeah. So I would say so here, and I can probably similarly in the U.S. So injections are generally going to be on the cheapest side, and pills will be a little on the pricier side. I would say as you move from generic to brand-based pills, the price goes up a bit, and we start getting into the realm of around compounded cream pricing territory.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I would say if you're going for like ideal products when it comes to the pills, the price is going to be a little bit on the upper end. So yeah, it's definitely important to factor in. Whereas injections will be on the lower end of pricing.
All right.
So obviously, at least here, we'll factor in whether. Well, again, I'll present it as an option to the patients, but obviously, if they have a drug plan or if they just
Mhm.
want it and don't care about the pricing. But yeah, I tell them ahead of time that the pricing for this could be a little bit more on the upper end. Pricing for injections is more on the lower end. But then you
All
got
right.
your guys that are like, I will never ever inject. So yeah.
Yeah, and you told us that especially with pills, you focus more on symptoms, like most providers do for creams and injections as well.
Yep.
But that the levels don't get that high, maybe.
Yeah, I find that what we typically see is that, and I've talked with many people who also, very recently, actually, in the last week, I've talked to some people who do quite a bit of pills. And what I find is that, yeah, the levels don't get as high typically, but we get a lot of patients who feel great on, again, we go up on the dose, the levels do climb up a bit, but there does seem to be a bit of almost like a plateauing effect to a small extent. And so we do get levels in the upper end of normal ranges, but we patients start feeling better even before that. And so I think there might be a bit of a disconnect because of that lymphatic absorption. There could be a bit of a disconnect between what we're really seeing in serum levels and maybe what we're really getting at the androgen receptor level. I think there's probably a bit of a disconnect there. And so um, it becomes just a case of, hey, saying, you feel great? Yeah. Do you want any changes? Nope. I feel perfect. And they acknowledge their level is, let's say, good or decent, and that's kind of the end of that. So we'll titrate upward in terms of improving their symptoms and getting them feeling really good.
Oh,
But the levels don't always get as high as we would expect. But I think the lymphatic absorption just plays a major role into that. And
mhm.
I think that at the androgen receptor level, we're just not seeing the same effect as we would, um, like reflected in the serum levels as we do with injectables and topicals.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.